Hello everyone. I would first like to wish all of you a very good morning, good afternoon, or a good evening, depending on where you are joining us from. Welcome to another episode of Identity in 15, powered by the WSO2 Identity Server. In today's episode, we are going to explore the configuration of single sign-on, OSSO, for Lucidchart Enterprise using the WSO2 Identity Server. Before we start, I would like to introduce myself. I'm Minoli De Silva, a software engineer in the WSO2 Identity and Access Management team. So before we go ahead with the demonstration, I would like to give you some insight on the benefits of integrating Lucidchart with the WSO2 Identity Server via using single sign-on. So with single sign-on, so if you are an owner of an organization, the members of your organization will have the ability of signing in once to access multiple applications. So if you integrate Lucidchart, which is a diagramming application, they will get the capability of creating diagrams using Lucidchart, and they will be able to log into it seamlessly using WSO2 Identity Server. In addition to that, with a WSO2 Identity Server, you can manage all the user information, users in Identity Server securely, as all the user data will be available in a single location without having them in multiple applications. The users will also have the benefit of having having to remember a single set of credentials without having to remember multiple sets of credentials for each application they want to use within your organization. I would like to first mention the prerequisites we need for the configuration. The first thing you need is you need to have a Lucidchart account, and it needs to be of the enterprise category. Lucidchart provides different accounts such as free, teams, and enterprise, etc. So when it comes to the single sign-on feature, currently Lucidchart provides this feature for only the enterprise category. So the next thing you need to have is you need to have the WSO2 Identity Server up and running. So I already have my WSO2 Identity Server set up in my local machine. So if you do not have a WSO2 Identity Server downloaded, you can always go to our website wso2.com and /identity server to download the latest version of Identity Server. So you can click on the Try It Now button, provide your email, read and accept the license, and then it will provide you with different installation options to install WSO2 Identity Server, the latest release, which is the 5.11.0 release. In addition to that, you can go through the Identity Server documentation, and also you can take a look at the previous releases as well. So since we took a look at what we need for this configuration, we will go ahead and so this is the Lucidchart Enterprise account. So this is how the dashboard will look. So this is, so I am the administrator of your account. So if you're managing an organization and if you want to have users to access Lucidchart, you need to set up single sign-on, and you need to be the administrator for that. So on the left-hand side, the sidebar menu, we can see a set of menu items, and here we have the admin option, which provides all the administrator privileges. So when you go to the admin option, all the administrator options are listed, such as users, identity management, app integration, collaboration, etc. So first thing we need to do is we need to enable Saml authentication. So I was talking about single sign-on. So single sign-on we're using with Saml, So SAML is an open standard which is used for data transfer, authentication and authorization data transfers between identity providers and service providers. So we need to allow SAML authentication first. Once you allow it, you can save the changes. Additionally, if you want to change the default authentication method provided for your user when they try to access the login page, you can either you can change the default authentication method from here if you prefer. So I will change it to SAML. So this is optional. Then I'm going to save the changes. So once the changes are saved, either you can do the configuration for SAML SSO from here configure section, or you can go back to admin menu and select app integrations. So now you can see, since we enabled SAML authentication from there, now the SAML section is displayed as enabled. So here this app, there are different app integration mechanisms that are available, general app integration mechanism. So I'm going to go to configure SAML. So SAML authentication is allowed. If we want, we can go to sign-in options and disable it as well. So SAML integration is offered to all active enterprise accounts in order to provide a single sign-in experience with Lucid. So, so next we come to the Lucidchart sign-in URL section. So in this section, this is the URL that facilitates a service provider initiated login. So this should be a unique domain you provide. So you can provide your organization's domain. So I'm going to provide the domain WSO2 demo. So this will be added to the sign-in URL, which will be provided to the members of your organization to access Lucidchart. So when they click on this, the provided URL with this domain, they will be directed to Lucidchart, which will provide the authentication option with WSO2 Identity Server. So I will save the changes for the domain. Then we have the identity provider section. So we need to upload the identity provider metadata, an XML file here. So currently we don't have it because we have to get it from the WSO2 Identity Server. So we'll skip that for now and we'll go to download service provider metadata. So this downloads an XML file which contains the metadata for Lucidchart. So I will download it. So this is the metadata file which I just downloaded. Then we need to do the configuration next in the WSO2 Identity Server Management Console. So I already have WSO2 Identity Server up and running. And so you can access the management console from the default port. And I will log in my account. Let me reload that. So we can always check the server logs from here. So while that is loading, I'll go to the documentation provided by Lucidchart for integrating application integrating with a identity provider. So all the instructions are provided, and there are some values that you need to configure as well. So most of these values are by default loaded into the identity provider with the metadata file we upload. I will show that in a while. So we have the digest algorithm to select the name ID, and there are 3 attributes. So these attributes, user email, user first name, user last name, needs to be created as claims from the WSO2 management console. Okay. Now we are in the management console of the identity server. So in the identity section, we have different options, and from here, the service providers, we can list the existing service providers. And so currently we are configuring a service provider, which is Lucidchart. So we need to add this as a service provider. So I clicked on the add option from service providers. So you can provide a unique name for the service provider. So to make it meaningful, I will name it Lucidchart. And I'm going to click on register. So next we need to go to inbound authentication configuration. So we are now in the edit section of the service provider we created. So inbound authentication configuration, which passes the incoming authentication request. So we are going to configure the Saml SSO configuration. So I will click on configure. Then as you can see, there are 3 modes, but what we need to select is the metadata file configuration, because we downloaded the metadata file. So I just dragged and dropped it here, or you can just select choose file and then select it from where you have downloaded the file into. So when you upload the metadata file, all the details, including the application certificate, the issuer details, and everything will be loaded from the metadata file. So you don't have to configure anything manually here. So we will go to the Saml configuration. So if you take a look at the documentation, there are some things. So the digest algorithm is SSA256. So there are some small configurations to be done. And in addition to that, for the response signing algorithm, we need to select SHA256 because for SHA1, you can use authentication flow, but Lucidchart shows a warning. And so I'm going to enable response signing. You can either keep it enabled or disabled. So it was not by default enabled. So response signing is actually when the service provider sends a request of authentication to the identity provider. Once the process is complete, the response is sent back to the service provider from the identity provider. And so we are going to enable it to be signed so as to enable the proper trust relationship between the identity provider and the service provider. So you have the option to enable single logout, and there are multiple other customization options, but I'm going to go to the basic ones to get the flow working. So enable attribute profile and include attributes in the response always is selected by default by the metadata we uploaded. So, so the response, authentication response will always contain the user attributes of the authenticated user. So when you scroll down, there is an option to download the IDP metadata. So it will download, when we click on this, another metadata file which we need to upload to Lucidchart configuration. Another small change we need to do is in the assertion consumer URL. The assertion consumer URL is URL of the service provider to which the redirection happens from the identity provider with the authentication response. So the metadata file provides this assertion consumer URL, but there are two assertion consumer URLs provided in the documentation provided by Lucidchart. So actually when Lucidchart sends a request, I noticed that it is actually sending the assertion consumer URL in the authentication request as this lucidchart.com. So we need to have both the assertion consumer URLs. I will add the other one as well. So you need to have your domain at the end. Okay. So once you're done with this configuration, you can click on update. There is another configuration we need to do. So the attribute statement I mentioned earlier that they have provided a set of user claims that are required when the user first signs into Lucidchart. So from the edit section of the service provider, you can select claim configuration and you need to select define custom claim dialect. So you can see there's an accepted naming convention provided by Lucidchart for the 3 claims. So we need to add 3 claims. First one is user.email. Second one is user.firstname. Third one is user.lastname. So I have added it exactly as the accepted naming convention given here. Then we need to map it with our local claim. So for user email, we have the local claim as claims email address. For the first name, we have given name claim. Then for the last name, we have the claim as last name. So these are requested claims. Okay, so I'm going to update it here. Then, like I said, so you're going to allow your users to access applications with single sign-on. So I will create a user who will be accessing Lucidchart. So you need to provide a password. So you can go to the user profile and provide the first name, last name, the required fields. So now I updated the user profile. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the Lucidchart configuration, and here we have the metadata file we downloaded from the identity provider. I'm going to drag it and drop here. So it will load the file. So it you can always change the identity provider name and save it because it detects as some name. Then after that, so you can see the expiration, product everything details are there. Then there is a sign-in URL which contains the domain you have provided. So this is the sign-in URL you need to provide to your users to seamlessly log into Lucidchart with single sign. So I will go to this URL. Now, as you can see, this the URL provided by Lucidchart directed us to the identity server. So you need to provide the user details. So this is the user I created. I will enter the password. Then if you want, you can click remember me. Continue. So as you can see, the requested claims, it says Lucidchart would need to know some of the details. So you can select the attributes. They are not all mandatory. Then you can click on continue. You are now redirected back to Lucidchart. So as you can see, the user has been logged in. You can see it shows the username that was provided. And you can see this is not an admin user because we don't have the administrator option. So for the user I created with the WSO2 Identity Server, so single sign-on access now has been provided. So since it's a new user, you can select all these customization options as well. Okay. So let's get back to our slides. So that actually concludes our demonstration of configuring single sign-on for Lucidchart Enterprise with WSO2 Identity Server. So now it's question time. So if you have any questions, you can always ask in the YouTube live chat. So let me check if you have any questions. So at the moment, we don't have any questions, so I'll give it a few more seconds. So in the meantime, I would like to remind you that if you run into any issues when you watch this video at a later time, you can always ask the questions through our Slack channel. So you can access it using is.slack.wso2.com. So feel free to ask any questions related to this video or any other issues you run into, any other questions you have when you configure, when you work with the identity server. Okay. So, also, don't forget to follow us on Twitter. Our Twitter account link is provided in the description. Also, subscribe to our YouTube channel to watch more videos like this. And yeah, we don't have any questions at the moment. Also, I would like to remind you that the documentation that I showed you for Lucidchart Saml configuration, which was provided by Lucidchart, can also be found in the description. Okay, so since we don't have any questions at the moment, I would like to conclude the session now. So thank you all for joining, and please join back for more episodes of Identity. Thank you.